Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be exploring Aldous Huxley's The Doors of Perception, along with his essay, Heaven and Hell. You probably know him as the author of Brave New World.
Yeah, very famous for that one.
Right. But Huxley was so much more than just a science fiction writer.
Absolutely. He was a novelist and an essayist and a philosopher. He even did some screenwriting. I mean, just a true intellectual powerhouse.
Yeah, and his family background is unbelievable. Like, did you know?
Yeah.
He was the grandson of Thomas Henry Huxley, the super famous biologist.
Of course, yeah. Quite a legacy.
Seriously. I mean, that's got to be some dinner table conversation right there.
Eh.
So anyway, today we're going to deep dive into Huxley's exploration of, well, human potential, I guess you could say, and the ways we can expand our perception of reality.
And it's not just theory with him.
Exactly.
He was an experimenter, especially when it comes to understanding human consciousness.
Okay, so let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Huxley actually experimented with mescaline, under medical supervision, of course. And this wasn't just some, casual, let's see what happens kind of thing.
Right. He wasn't just trying to, get high or something.
Yeah.
He was approaching it scientifically.
Exactly.
Really trying to understand how mescaline affected perception and consciousness. I mean, let's not forget his grandfather, huge champion of scientific inquiry, so that legacy definitely rubbed off on him.
It makes me wonder if his grandfather would participated, Like imagine.
Oh, man, could you imagine?
Right. Anyway, it's so cool that Huxley went beyond just, thinking and writing about these things.
Oh, yeah.
He dove right in, and what he discovered was, well, kind of mind-blowing.
Totally mind-blowing. He described it as this intense experience of what he called pure being.
Pure being.
Yeah, pure being. Even everyday objects took on this profound significance.
Really?
Yeah, like even his clothes or furniture, like they were overflowing with this sense of existence itself. It wasn't just like, oh, I see things differently.
Mm-hmm.
It was like feeling the essence of being.
Wow. That is intense.
Right. Makes you think, like, how much do we filter out in our daily lives?
It's true, yeah.
All these little nuances and layers of experience.
Yeah. And he was really interested in that filtering process, right?
Oh, yeah, big time. He thought we turned to things that actually numb our senses.
What do you mean?
Well, things like mindless entertainment or too much drinking.
Ah, I see.
Those are just temporary escapes. I mean, they leave you feeling pretty empty in the end.
Right, yeah. It's like trying to fill a void with distractions instead of facing what's really there.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe these kinds of experiences, like what Huxley had with the mescaline, maybe they help us bypass those distractions.
Maybe.
And connect with something, I don't know, more real.
And this is where it gets really interesting because this connects to another one of his big interests, art.
Okay.
He believed that artists, especially those like, say, Van Gogh or William Blake, they were naturally tapping into this heightened perception. Like they could see the world with this clarity that most of us miss.
I love that. It's like their art wasn't just a reflection of the world, but a window into a different way of seeing it.
Exactly.
So did he think everyone had this potential? Or was it just something, unique to artists?
He thought we all have the potential for it, this expanded awareness, but we kind of, suppress it or we lose touch with it.
As we get older and more, jaded.
Right, exactly.
So what? He saw art as a way to tap back into it.
He did, yeah. He said that looking at a Sim Dynasty landscape painting with its massive, misty mountains could actually evoke a similar feeling to being under the influence of mescaline.
Wait, so he's saying you can access those profound experiences without necessarily needing drugs?
That's exactly what he's suggesting, yeah. Art, for him, was a way to cultivate this more direct and heightened perceptual awareness. Quiet the mind, tune into the senses in a different way.
So it's not just what we see, but how we see it.
Right. And he wasn't saying art is creating hallucinations.
Right.
He was saying it can help us break free from our habitual ways of seeing and just open ourselves up to new possibilities.
Okay, so we've got mescaline, we've got art. What else did he look into?
Well, light and color in religious art and architecture really fascinated him.
Okay.
He was so intrigued by how certain materials like gems, stained glass, or polished marble, they were constantly used to evoke a sense of the otherworldly, the luminous, almost divine, you could say.
And he didn't think that was a coincidence, right?
No, not at all.
He saw a connection between these materials and the descriptions people gave of, visions and mystical experiences.
Exactly. He suggested that our concept of heaven might be rooted in how our brains perceive light and color.
Whoa, that's pretty deep.
Right. Imagine a stained glass window. Light streams through, transforming a space with those vibrant hues and patterns. It's like this visual representation of the transformations that can happen within consciousness during those mystical moments.
I'm never going to look at a stained glass window the same way again.
Right.
Okay, so we've got light, we've got color, landscapes too, right? Like they can totally evoke those feelings of awe and wonder, just like Huxley associated with altered states.
Absolutely. And he made this fascinating distinction between distant views and close-ups.
Oh, tell me about that.
Well, he suggested that vast panoramic views, like the kind that make you feel small,
Mm,
they evoke a sense of the infinite. It's like looking into the vast unknown,
right.
and it's like a mirror reflecting the unexplored depths within ourselves.
So those landscapes are kind of reflecting the vastness within us. That's pretty cool.
And then you've got the close-ups, those tiny details we often miss.
Mhm.
He was really drawn to Henri Rousseau's jungle paintings, the way they pull you into this world just bursting with life.
Oh, I love those.
Yeah.
Yeah, like every leaf, every insect is just pulsating with energy.
Exactly. And Huxley suggests that by shifting our focus, paying attention to both the grand and the minute, we can reconnect with that sense of wonder and mystery that's often missing in our modern lives.
So again, it's not just what we see, but how we see it.
Right. It's about being more present, more aware.
Cultivating a mindful awareness of what's around us, whether it's a giant mountain or a teeny tiny insect.
Precisely. It's all there waiting to be discovered.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So we've talked about all these external things that shape how we see things, but Huxley also looked at, the internal stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Like our thoughts, our emotions,
Yeah.
all of that colors our experiences.
He believed that negative emotions, things like fear and anger,
Mm-hmm.
even self-loathing, could actually distort our perception.
Oh, for sure. He saw a connection between these visionary experiences and the idea of saving faith. That's in a lot of religion.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, theologians often struggle with the idea that doing good deeds automatically means a blissful afterlife.
Right, because even the most, virtuous people don't always have positive experiences.
Exactly. So being good doesn't necessarily guarantee a ticket to paradise.
So what was he saying?
Well, he thought what's really needed is a kind of, I don't know, loving trust.
Yeah.
Like a confidence and openness that allows for those blissful experiences no matter what's going on externally.
So it's about cultivating this inner state
Yeah.
that makes us more receptive to these experiences.
Exactly, rather than trying to force them or control them.
Surrendering to the experience, letting ourselves be transformed by it.
You got it.
Okay, so we've covered art, landscapes, the inner world. But Huxley didn't shy away from exploring some pretty extreme ways to achieve these altered states, did he?
He did not. And this is where things get a little more intense.
Intense how?
He dug into the history of asceticism,
Okay.
looking at things like prolonged fasting, self-flagellation, even sensory deprivation.
Hold on. Self-flagellation. How does that even fit in?
Well, Huxley pointed out that these practices have been used for centuries across cultures as paths to spiritual insight.
I guess I never thought of it that way.
He even had a biochemical explanation,
Oh, really?
suggesting that these extreme practices actually alter body chemistry, potentially leading to altered states of consciousness.
So he's saying that pushing the body to its limits can actually impact the mind.
Exactly. He compared it to vitamin deficiencies, which can also, mess with your mental state.
Makes sense.
He said things like fasting could deplete certain nutrients, while self-inflicted pain triggers changes in the body. All these shifts could affect the brain's usual filtering mechanisms.
Wait, you mean the filtering that keeps us grounded in, everyday reality?
Exactly. And by lowering those filters, he thought we might open ourselves up to a wider range of experiences.
Including the ones that are usually, blocked off?
Exactly.
So these extreme practices create a kind of loophole in our perception, allowing us to glimpse something beyond the ordinary.
That's one way to look at it. But Huxley was also quick to point out the dangers involved.
Oh, yeah, of course. It makes sense. Just because something can alter consciousness doesn't mean it's, good for you or safe.
Exactly. Which is why he stressed caution and awareness. He understood that the method you choose makes a big difference.
Right, right. He even looked at other methods, didn't he? Like things that were pretty experimental back then, like carbon dioxide inhalation or stroboscopic lamps.
He did. He was fascinated by the tools, both chemical and technological, that could alter perception. It's like we've always had these doors in the wall, whether it's a chemical, a tech device, or even our own body's responses.
And that brings us to one of Huxley's, I guess you could say, core concerns.
Hmm.
How are these tools used? And how does our environment, both social and technological, influence our access to these states? He knew this wasn't just a personal thing.
Mm.
This has implications for, society as a whole.
Right. It's not just about the individual journey.
Right.
It's about how those journeys intersect with the world around us.
Okay, so we've talked about all these ways that Huxley explored altered states. But I think before we jump into his conclusions about reality and perception, maybe we should understand the man himself a little better.
I agree. He wasn't exactly, your typical lab coat wearing scientist.
Right, not exactly who you picture when you think psychedelic explorer.
Mm.
So what made him so unique?
Well, for one, he was a true Renaissance man, novelist, essayist, philosopher. And as we mentioned, he came from a pretty remarkable family.
Oh yeah, grandson of Thomas Henry Huxley, the biologist.
That's right. And Aldous, he inherited that intellectual curiosity.
Totally.
He wasn't just some guy messing around with drugs.
Right, he had a purpose.
He brought this incredible depth of knowledge to his experiences.
Yeah, and that really comes through in the doors of perception. He wasn't just chasing a high.
Yeah.
He wanted to understand the connection to art, religion, consciousness itself.
And from what I've read, he wasn't exactly Mr. Popular, even among intellectuals of his day.
Well,
Yeah, kind of an outsider, always questioning, always pushing boundaries.
not one for easy answers then.
Not at all. He was searching for something deeper, a real understanding of what it means to be human.
And it makes his exploration of these altered states all the more fascinating, right?
Right.
It wasn't just theoretical for him, it was personal.
Totally.
He wanted to break free from the limitations, experience something profound, discover those hidden dimensions within himself.
And he believed those experiences, done the right way, could transform not just individuals,
Yeah.
but society as a whole.
He was kind of ahead of his time in a lot of ways, wasn't he?
Oh, big time.
I mean, think about the renewed interest in psychedelics today. All this research, the discussions about consciousness, Huxley was on that path back in the 1950s.
He was. He was exploring those themes long before they went mainstream.
And he wasn't afraid to challenge conventions, question assumptions. He was interested in the full spectrum of human experience. The light and the dark, the mundane and the transcendent.
Which is why The Doors of Perception still resonates with people today.
Yeah, it's not just a book about drugs. It's a reflection on reality, perception, meaning.
It's a book for anyone who's ever felt lost or confused, or maybe just curious about what lies beyond the surface of things.
So what does this all mean for us today? What can we take away from Huxley's journey?
I think the key takeaway is that there's more to reality than we typically see. We're constantly bombarded with distractions, ready-made interpretations of the world. Huxley's reminding us to slow down, pay attention,
Yeah.
see the world with fresh eyes.
Like wake up and experience the world around you.
Exactly. Whether it's through art or nature or meditation, even, yes, responsible exploration of altered states, the potential for deeper understanding is always there.
It's about opening those doors of perception and stepping into the unknown.
And remembering that we have a choice in how we experience the world. We can be passive consumers of information, or we can be active explorers of consciousness.
Okay, so going back to Huxley's own exploration, one of the most interesting things he noted was how these experiences seem to kind of dissolve the ego, that sense of self that usually separates us from the world around us.
Yes. He talked about this egolessness where the boundaries between self and other kind of blurred or even disappeared. And this led him to some really profound insights about reality itself and, our place in it.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What kind of insights are we talking about?
Well, he started questioning the whole idea that our everyday perception is the only valid or the only real one.
Oh.
He saw it as just one possible interpretation.
Okay.
One way of filtering the massive flow of information that we're always dealing with.
So it's like our normal consciousness is a kind of filter, limiting what we can perceive.
That's what he proposed.
Ah.
He said that during his mescaline experience, this filter loosened up, allowing him to experience a wider range of perceptions.
Emotions, thoughts,
all of it.
everything. So it's like he could access parts of his mind that were normally hidden or blocked off.
Precisely. And what he found in those hidden areas wasn't always, pleasant or comfortable.
Really?
Some of his experiences were quite unsettling, even scary.
So it wasn't all like blissful visions and, beautiful insights.
Not all the time.
There was a darker side to it as well.
Oh, definitely. He wasn't naive about the risks of exploring these altered states. He understood they could be incredibly challenging.
Right.
And potentially dangerous if you're not careful.
I mean, yeah, it makes sense. If you're
Yeah.
suddenly exposed to this whole range of new perceptions, emotions, some of them are bound to be unpleasant, right?
For sure. And that's why Huxley always emphasized the importance of having a solid foundation.
Like being grounded.
Exactly. You need stability before you venture into those uncharted territories of the mind. He thought without that, these experiences could lead to, psychological instability or even worse.
So it's not something to take lightly. It's more than just like taking a drug and seeing what happens.
Right.
It's about understanding the potential risks and benefits,
Mm-hmm.
approaching it with responsibility and self-awareness.
Absolutely. And that's one of the most valuable things we can learn from Huxley. I think
Mm-hmm.
he wasn't promoting reckless experimentation.
Yo.
He was calling for a more mindful, intentional approach to exploring, the potential of human consciousness.
It's like he was saying, yeah, there are doors of perception, but be careful which ones you open and how you walk through them.
Exactly. He knew these experiences could be incredibly transformative,
Mm.
but they require maturity,
Yeah.
discernment, and preparation.
Okay, so Huxley has these profound experiences with mescaline,
Mm-hmm.
and they lead him to question the nature of reality
Mm-hmm.
and the limits of our everyday perception. But what did he actually believe about reality? Did he come to any conclusions?
Well, Huxley's views on reality, they were pretty complex. He don't claim to have all the answers, but he offered some intriguing insights based on his experiences.
Okay, give me some examples.
Well, he had this idea that what we perceive as reality is really just a tiny part of this much larger, more mysterious and interconnected whole. And he used this really great analogy of a radio receiver.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one. He said our minds are like radios, tuned to a specific frequency, only able to pick up a limited range of signals from this vast spectrum of existence.
Right. And he believed that under certain conditions, like during his mescaline experience,
Mm,
it's possible to tune into different frequencies, expand our awareness,
okay.
and experience a wider range of reality.
So, there are all these other levels of reality that we're just not aware of, like hidden channels on the cosmic radio dial.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
So it's like there's more to life than what we can see and touch and measure.
Mhm.
There's a whole other deeper dimension that we can access.
Yes.
Whether it's through these altered states or spiritual practices or even just being more mindful
Precise.
in our daily lives.
And he believed that connecting with that deeper dimension, even just for a moment, could have this profound impact on our lives.
Like how?
It could help us live with more meaning,
Okay.
more purpose,
Mhm.
more compassion.
So it's not just about having cool experiences. It's about connecting with something bigger.
Yes. To ourselves, to each other, to the universe as a whole.
I think I'm starting to understand why people are still reading and talking about Huxley's work today.
He was onto something, that's for sure.
He was, wasn't he? Okay, so we've talked about his views on reality, perception, the potential of these altered states.
Mm.
But Huxley wasn't just, a philosopher and explorer.
Mm.
He was also a social critic.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
He seemed really concerned about the state of the world and where we were all heading.
He was a keen observer of his time,
Yeah.
and he saw some troubling trends in the mid-20th century.
Like what?
The rise of consumerism,
Mm-hmm.
the growing power of technology,
Okay, yeah.
the threat of nuclear war, the erosion of freedom.
It sounds like he was witnessing the birth of many issues that we're still struggling with today.
Exactly. And what really worried him was how these forces were shaping human consciousness.
In a bad way.
Yeah, like
Right.
limiting our potential for
Mhm.
growth, for creativity, for spiritual awareness.
So he wasn't just worried about external threats.
Right.
He was worried about the internal threat.
Yes, exactly.
The ways we were being conditioned to think and behave
Mhm.
in ways that were harmful, not just to ourselves, but to society.
Exactly. He thought the modern world, with its emphasis on speed, efficiency, material stuff, was creating this kind of spiritual emptiness.
Yeah, I can see that.
We were becoming disconnected from ourselves, from nature.
It's like he saw the rise of what we might call the matrix today,
That's a great way to put it.
a system that keeps us distracted, entertained, and ultimately controlled.
Exactly. And Huxley wasn't just complaining about it.
Yep.
He was actively looking for ways to resist these forces,
Oh.
both in his own life and through his writing.
So he wasn't just a critic, he was kind of an activist in his own way.
I would say so, yes.
And was this exploration of altered states, was that part of his,
I
activism?
think it was, yeah. He saw these experiences as a way to break free from the mental conditioning of the modern world, to expand our awareness and reconnect with, that deeper potential.
For love, wisdom, creativity.
All of it, yeah.
It's like he was saying, if you want to change the world, you got to change yourself first.
Right. Start with the inner transformation, and the outer transformation will follow.
So he believed that personal transformation was essential for social transformation.
Absolutely. And he saw things like these altered states, art, spirituality,
hmm
even mindfulness, as powerful tools to help people, change from within.
Okay, so Huxley's concerned about the world,
Mm.
and he thinks exploring these altered states of consciousness could be a way to, I don't know, counter some of these negative trends. But what about the future? Was he, like, optimistic or pessimistic about where we're all headed?
That's a great question. Huxley was a complex guy, and his views on the future, well, they were nuanced. He saw both the potential for progress
Mhm.
and the possibility of, well, disaster.
So he wasn't afraid to look at the darkness, but he also had hope.
Exactly. He knew that humanity was at a crossroads.
Yeah.
We were facing choices that would determine our fate.
What kind of choices did he think those were?
Well, he really emphasized individual responsibility. He
Yeah.
thought we all need to wake up from this collective sleepwalking and, take ownership of our lives and
Mm.
how we're impacting the world.
So it wasn't about waiting for, like, governments or institutions to save us.
Yeah.
It was about individuals taking action.
Exactly. He believed that real change starts within. It starts with a shift in consciousness,
Mm,
a recognition of how connected we all are,
right.
and a willingness to act with compassion and wisdom and courage.
But he also thought technology, while dangerous, could be a powerful tool for good.
Right. Absolutely. He was fascinated by technology's potential, but he knew it could be misused. He emphasized using it wisely, ethically, in service of humanity.
Not letting it control us.
Right, exactly. It's about finding that balance.
Where technology helps us without dehumanizing us.
Yes, exactly. And that's a message that's even more relevant today, don't you think?
Oh, totally. Okay, so Huxley's vision of the future was a mix of hope and warning.
Hmm.
He saw both the amazing things we're capable of and the terrible things.
Right.
And ultimately, he believed that the choices we make, both as individuals and as a society,
Hmm.
will determine what happens next.
It's up to us to decide what kind of world we want to live in.
We can't just sit back and watch.
No.
We have to participate in shaping our destiny.
I think Huxley's work is a good guide for navigating these uncertain times.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
It's a reminder to, stay awake,
Mm.
question what you're told,
Right.
and to act with courage and wisdom and compassion.
Yes, definitely. And don't forget, those doors of perception are always open,
Oh, that's right.
just waiting for us to explore.
The vast potential within ourselves and the world around us.
Exactly.
Okay, we've covered a lot in this deep dive, but before we wrap up, I think there's something we haven't directly addressed. We've been using the term altered states of consciousness, but what does that actually mean?
Yeah, that's a great point, and it's a tough one to define. But basically, an altered state is any mental state that's significantly different from our normal waking consciousness.
So, like dreaming. That's definitely different from being awake.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
But there are others too. Meditation, hypnosis, trance states, even flow states, when you're completely absorbed in what you're doing.
And Huxley thought these states could be valuable,
Mhm.
essential even for growth and understanding.
He saw them as a way to access different parts of our minds, break
Mhm.
free from limiting beliefs,
Mm.
and just, connect with a wider range of experiences and possibilities. But he also said to be careful, right? Don't just jump into these things without any thought.
Oh, absolutely. Preparation, intention, guidance, especially with psychedelics.
So it's not just about taking a drug and seeing what happens.
No, it's about approaching these experiences with respect and awareness.
A willingness to learn and grow.
And it's key to remember these experiences are subjective.
Okay.
What's transformative for one person might be confusing or even frightening for another.
Okay, that makes sense. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Huxley's work, what's the one thing you hope listeners take away from all of this?
I'd say the biggest message is that there's always more to discover within ourselves and in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Huxley reminds us to stay curious, keep asking questions, and never stop exploring.
I love that. It's an invitation to embrace the mystery, step outside our comfort zones, and approach life with wonder and possibility.
And who knows what we might find?
Exactly. The world is full of hidden wonders. So go out there, explore, experiment,
Uh-huh.
but do it with intention, respect, and a sense of wonder.
Right.
And you might discover that reality is way more magical than you ever imagined.
Beautifully said. I couldn't agree more.
Thanks for joining us today on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring.
Well, his views on reality were complex, very nuanced.
Yeah, I can imagine.
He didn't claim to have, like all the answers figured out,
Of course not.
but he offered some really interesting insights based on his experiences and his deep understanding of, well, everything, really. Philosophy, religion, science.
Okay, so, what were some of his insights? What did he come to believe about the nature of reality after all those explorations?
One of the big ones was that what we think of as reality, everyday reality, is actually just a tiny, tiny sliver
Okay.
of this much larger, more mysterious, interconnected whole. He used a really good analogy to explain it. A radio receiver.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one. Our minds are like radios, tuned to a specific frequency,
Right.
only picking up this limited range of signals in
Exactly.
this vast spectrum of, existence.
And he believed that under certain conditions, like during his mescaline experience, it's possible to tune into different frequencies,
Okay.
expand our awareness, experience a wider range of, I guess you could call it, reality.
So, there are all these levels of reality that we just don't have access to normally, like hidden channels on the cosmic radio dial.
That's a great way to think about it. He even drew connections to, mystical and religious traditions.
Interesting.
Which talk about, transcendence and unity and interconnectedness.
Right.
All these things that seem to kind of echo his own insights.
It's like, he's saying there's so much more to life than what we can just see and touch and measure. There's this deeper, more mysterious dimension
Right.
that we can access.
Maybe through altered states or spiritual practices.
Or even just by being more mindful
Exactly.
in our everyday life.
And he really believed that connecting with that deeper dimension, even just for a little while, could completely change your life.
Make it more meaningful.
Yeah, give it more purpose, more compassion.
So it's not just about having these wild experiences. It's about finding a deeper connection to, ourselves, each other, the universe.
Exactly.
I'm starting to get why Huxley's work is still so relevant today.
He was definitely onto something.
In a world that feels, I don't know, so fragmented and disconnected, he's reminding us of the possibility of unity,
Yes.
of transcending our limited views and actually experiencing a sense of wholeness.
I think that's a big part of his appeal.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about his views on reality, on perception, and the potential of these altered states. But Huxley wasn't just, a philosopher or an explorer.
Right.
He was also a social critic.
Very much so.
He seemed really concerned about, the state of the world
Oh, absolutely.
and where we were all heading.
He saw a lot of things happening that worried him.
Like what kinds of things?
Well, the rise of consumerism,
Okay.
the growing power of technology, the threat of nuclear war, the erosion of individual freedom.
So he was seeing a lot of the same issues we're dealing with now.
Exactly. And he was really worried about how these forces were shaping our consciousness.
You mean limiting us?
Yes, limiting our potential for everything. Growth, creativity, spiritual awareness.
So he wasn't just worried about, the external threats, but
Yeah.
the internal ones too.
Exactly, the way we were being conditioned to think and behave.
In ways that were, what, harmful?
Harmful, yes, to ourselves, to society.
He thought the modern world, with its emphasis on speed and efficiency and material stuff, was creating this kind of spiritual emptiness.
Yes, that's it.
We were becoming disconnected from our true nature, from nature itself.
Absolutely.
It's almost like he was seeing the rise of what we'd call the matrix today,
Yeah.
right?
Ooh, I like that analogy.
This system that's designed to distract us, entertain us, and keep us under control.
Right, and Huxley, he wasn't just sitting back and complaining about it.
He wasn't.
No, he was looking for ways to resist.
Really?
In his own life, through his writing.
So he wasn't just a critic, he was kind of an activist.
Yes, in his own way.
And was this whole exploration of altered states, was that part of that activism?
I think so. He saw those experiences as a way to break free from that mental conditioning of the modern world, expand our awareness, reconnect with our potential.
For love, for wisdom, for creativity.
All of it. Yeah.
Like he was saying, if you want to change the world, you have to change yourself first.
Right.
Start with the inner transformation.
And the outer transformation will follow.
He believed that personal transformation was essential for social transformation.
Absolutely. And he saw things like altered states, art, spirituality, mindfulness
Hmm.
as tools to help people make that interchange.
Okay, so Huxley is concerned about the world, and he thinks exploring altered states could, I don't know, help us shift course a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the future? Was he optimistic?
And
Pessimistic?
that's a great question. He was a complex thinker.
Hmm.
So his views on the future, well, they were kind of both.
Both.
He saw the possibility of progress and the potential for disaster.
So he wasn't afraid to acknowledge the dark side of things, but he also had hope,
Yes, exactly. He knew humanity was at a crossroads.
facing, like, a choice.
Yes, choices that would determine our future.
What did he think those choices were?
Well, he really emphasized individual responsibility.
Okay.
He said we need to wake up.
Like, stop sleepwalking through life.
Yes, and take responsibility for our lives
Mhm.
and our impact on the world.
So it wasn't about waiting for someone else to fix things.
No, no.
It was about each of us taking action.
Exactly. Real change starts from within.
Okay.
It starts with a shift in consciousness, a recognition that we're all interconnected, and a willingness to act with compassion and wisdom. Yeah.
And courage.
And courage, yes.
But he also saw potential in technology, right?
He did.
Even though it could be dangerous.
He was fascinated by technology,
Mhm.
but he knew it could be misused. He thought we should use it wisely, ethically.
In service of humanity.
Yes, not the other way around.
It's about finding that balance, right?
Yeah. Where technology makes our lives better
Mm-hmm.
without, dehumanizing us. I think that's incredibly relevant today, even more so than in Huxley's time.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so Huxley's view of the future was complex.
Mm-hmm.
A mix of hope and caution.
Great.
He saw the potential for both great things and terrible things.
And he believed that ultimately the choices we make individually and collectively
Mhm.
would determine the outcome.
It's up to us to decide what kind of world we want to live in.
We can't just sit back and let things happen.
We have to actually participate in shaping our own destiny.
Huxley's work offers us a guide, I think, for navigating these times.
Yeah.
A reminder to, stay aware, question everything, act with courage, compassion, and wisdom.
And remember, those doors of perception, they're always open, waiting for us to explore.
The vast potential within ourselves and the world around us.
Okay, so we've talked about how Huxley explored all these different ways to change his perception of reality. Mescaline, art, even some pretty intense practices.
Mm-hmm.
But, I don't know, isn't there kind of a paradox there?
What do you mean?
Well, he's searching for, like, truth, a deeper understanding of reality, but aren't the tools he's using, they're actually distorting reality.
That's a really interesting point, and it's something Huxley definitely grappled with.
Yeah.
If our senses can be fooled,
Right.
how can we ever be sure we're seeing, the real thing?
Exactly. How do we know that those profound insights he had, how do we know those are true?
Mm-hmm.
Or are they just, like, the result of a chemically altered brain?
Huxley knew this was a problem. He never claimed that these altered states were giving him access to, some objective ultimate truth.
Okay.
Instead, he saw them as tools for exploring the subjective nature of reality itself.
Okay, I think I'm following.
Remember that radio analogy?
Yeah, the one where our minds are like radios tuned to a specific frequency.
Right. Huxley thought these altered states were like, adjusting the dial,
Mm.
allowing him to pick up different frequencies of experience.
So he's not saying those frequencies are more real than our everyday perception.
Right.
It's just that they offer, like, a different perspective.
Exactly. It's like he was more interested in exploring the different ways we can experience and interpret reality.
Rather than looking for one definitive answer.
Right. He was fascinated by how adaptable our perception is, how our brains can create these wildly different worlds.
Based on what our internal state and the information we're getting.
Precisely. It really makes you wonder, right? What other realities are we missing out on because we're stuck in our usual way of seeing things?
Totally.
Yeah?
So how do we apply that to our own lives?
Well, Huxley believed we can cultivate a more, open and expansive awareness through things like mindfulness and meditation.
Right.
Even just paying closer attention to our senses. It's about being more present,
So noticing the stuff we usually just ignore.
Yes. And by becoming more aware of, our own biases and assumptions and all those mental filters, we can start to see the world in a new way.
Appreciate it all, its complexity and beauty.
Exactly. Just like those artists Huxley admired.
And that can lead to, like, a deeper understanding of ourselves and our place in the universe.
He thought so, yes. It's like by expanding our inner world, we can understand the outer world better.
It reminds me of that saying, we don't see the world as it is, we see it as we are.
That's perfect. And by understanding how our own minds work, we can start to push past our limits,
Mm,
expand our awareness, connect with something bigger than ourselves. I think that's what this whole deep dive is about, isn't it?
I think so, yeah.
Mm.
And Huxley's work gives us like a framework for doing that.
A reminder to, stay curious, challenge those
Keep
assumptions,
exploring.
always. And it all starts with paying attention, noticing the light on the leaves, the little shifts in your thoughts, the connections between things that seem totally separate.
It's about waking up to that wonder and mystery that's all around us, even in the everyday stuff.
Exactly. And maybe if we cultivate that sense of wonder, we can unlock some of those hidden doors of perception ourselves.
Well, I think that's a perfect place to end our deep dive into Aldous Huxley's The Doors of Perception and Heaven and Hell.
It's been a great conversation.
Thank you so much for joining us. And remember, the world is way more interesting than we think. Keep exploring, see what you find.